Hold on here. Julie Loken, she's flying on planes. This is not the smartest guys in the room. Welcome, Tom. How you doing today?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing excellent, man. I've had a sore throat for about 3 weeks. Is that normal?
I would say probably not. I mean, I'm not a medical professional, but in my absolutely non-professional opinion, 3 weeks is a long time to have a sore throat. Doesn't seem typical. Don't they usually say if symptoms persist, talk to a doctor? Isn't that like
just checking, man? Well, I mean, I was screaming at the Steeler game like right before the holiday, then skiing a couple times, then overindulging here and there. Basketball game last night. It's like, and then maybe there is like something wrong with the throat, or maybe I just need to quit yelling and screaming so much. All right, let's do this. Hey, not the smartest guys in the room. We're going to talk about Shine today. Julie Loken, you're traveling, so if you want to jump up and give us some thoughts before you have to do your thing, go ahead, Julie. Go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi. I'm in line boarding my flight, and now I know why the ticket was like $100 because I'm like in the back of the plane. So.
Right. I got on a plane one time and I just went to like a random seat because sometimes I'll fly in different planes. And so I go to a random seat and I'm sitting there just doing my thing. All of a sudden, some guy gets on and he was like, "You're in my seat." And I didn't realize that I was on like a different plane where this time I didn't just sit wherever I want. And then my seat obviously was back in the back by the bathroom.
That is the craziest story that you didn't know where.
Yeah.
Get your ticket. Southwest. You must have thought you're on Southwest.
I don't know.
But yeah.
Hey, I will go on, Tom. What do you want to add?
I was just going to say, Julie, if it makes you feel any better, for anybody else who feels that they've been relegated to the back of the plane, right? Statistically, although plane travel is exceptionally safe, much safer than the car ride to the airport, right?
You're going to freak me out right now.
No, I'm not. I'm not at all. Statistically, the back of the plane is the safest place to be on the plane, followed by over the wings. And the front of the plane is actually less safe, right? Now, none of them are unsafe. So like, you know, on the spectrum of very safe, the back of the plane is a little bit safer. So
all right, I'm headed to the way back. 30C.
Go for it, Jolie. Good luck back there. Make some new friends. It's always good to make friends on the plane. Talk to some people.
I have my Creative Con cards here. I'll to everybody.
There you go. Just go back and forth a couple times up the plane and do your thing. So sometimes when I travel, I think so little about where I'm traveling. You'll appreciate this, Tom. That one time I was going to a business meeting in Kentucky, and I got off the plane in Cincinnati, and that's Ohio. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting at the airport, and I needed to be there in like an hour. And I'm thinking, like, I got into like cold sweats because I realized I was in the wrong state. And I said, "How did this happen? Oh my God." And then, so I was petrified. And then I realized that Kentucky was just right over the border from Cincinnati, and I was where I needed to be. But that was how little thought I put into getting there.
Luckily, Tom is picking you up and driving you to Chicago.
Did you have time to stop for a bowl of chili in Cincinnati?
No, I had no time for that.
Do you know what I'm talking about? The Cincinnati chili?
Okay, let's flash real quick. Then we're going to get in. Who would eat chili with spaghetti with chili on it? It seems so odd, but the whole city likes it. Does anybody? John says that's good. Brian?
Yeah, you know what? There were two big-time restaurants or franchises out here, and that's the way they served it. It was beanless chili, and it was always on top of pasta.
Anybody else ever have it? Tom, you have it?
Actually, it's pretty good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've had it.
Yeah, that's Brian, the best. With basil, too.
Basil? What the hell? Who puts basil on anything? Basil is the most overrated of seasoning.
I mean, all right. So first of all, I would say basil's an herb. not a seasoning.
Okay.
But I mean, that's just being nitpicky, I guess. But yeah, the Cincinnati chili thing is it's beanless chili. But then if you get it, I think they call it all the way, or five way, I think, right? If I'm remembering right. It's the pasta, the spaghetti, the chili, beans, onions, and cheese. Right, is a five way. I think it's it's either a five way or a three way because the spaghetti and chili is automatic. Brian, what were you gonna say? Am I right?
Same. And sour cream.
Oh, don't forget the chives. The chives too.
That's topping. But yeah, that's the way they used to make it out here. You had an option with onions, cheese, sour cream, and it's actually really good.
All right, good stuff. Okay, speaking of good, we're going to get into what we were going to talk about today. Not the smartest guys in the room. We were talking about shine versus substance. That was like me and Tom. Sometimes we get in these conversations, and we're like, oh, why even start the show? So just because we're talking about like the value of substance, putting out substance, and then somehow people get caught up in the shine. Tom, you want to talk about getting caught up in the shine?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I see happen a lot. I hear from people a lot. I get questions about this kind of stuff a lot from folks. And really what I think happens is, people put this sort of premium on polish, right? There's this premium on shine and outward appearance. And I think it relates back to, the sort of Instagram life we've heard people talk about, that sort of moniker, that sort of very polished life that looks like everything is perfect, even when nobody's life is perfect. So, I mean, right away, your BS meter should be pinging, right? Whenever you see somebody's life that looks perfect on the internet, it's a facade, right? But I think a lot of folks who want to create, whether it's video content or they want to write a book or they want to start a blog or they want to write a newsletter or write articles and contribute to an online publication, any of those kinds of things. There's a lot of people that kind of never start because they're afraid that whatever they create will not be as shiny or as polished as the things they see other people do. And the other way that I think it affects people is it not only does it affect, like, stop people from starting in the first place, but for some people who do start or have already started and aren't getting, the sort of short-term feedback that they were really hoping for, is it pushes them in the direction of getting on that hamster wheel of chasing trends, right? Which is a never-ending vicious cycle, because if you see something trending, if it's already trending and then you hop on, right, you're behind the curve. Right? You're already behind. If it's already trending, you're too late. So you hop on that trend, you do the trending thing, and then all of a sudden something else is trending. So you hop to the next thing, but you're too late there because it's already trending. So then you hop to the next thing when it starts trending and you're too late. And then the hamster wheel just goes around and around and you never get anywhere because you're always kind of like, right behind the curve and never ahead of it. And also not being authentic. Right. And I think that's like at the crux for both kind of scenarios that I just talked about. That's really the crux of it, is that you're trying to portray a lifestyle, a scenario, an experience, whatever the case may be, that is inauthentic to who you are and what you represent. And that's the real problem, because at the end of the day, authenticity always wins. It always beats shine. It always beats polish. It always beats trends, right? Authenticity will create the opportunity for you to connect with a community that you could never connect with if you're just trying to be the shiniest object in the room. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, was just how do we get past, how do any of you in the room with us, right? Dom, Julie, John, Brian, Jason, Brian, any of you guys, how do you get past the shine, right? How have you worked past this stumbling block or this roadblock, and how do you resist the urge to get on the hamster wheel chasing trends? Yeah. So I don't know. That's what I think. That's what I want to know about. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, so I got some feedback there.
Okay, hold on. Let's go to Alves and then Swift. Go on. Alves and then Swift. You like Alves or Alves? Which one?
Alves is how you pronounce it.
Alves.
But I get it.
Gotcha.
I get everything. I get Elvis,
Okay.
Elves.
No, I'll never do it again. I just watched Elvis the other day. Go on.
Good
Go
movie.
on,
Good movie.
Alves. Yeah, it was.
So Tom, I great topic, by the way. I think that getting past it is very, very important, and we have a statement in the marketing world. It's all about selling the sizzle, not the steak. But once you sell the sizzle, now you have to sell the steak. And what that basically means is, you kind of, mastering that shiny part and getting on board with trends is a smart thing to do, because that pretty much ropes people into your message, ropes people into your cause, ropes people into your content. And then it's absolutely necessary to get past that. I mean, chasing trends all the time, all of a sudden you have this large audience waiting in a room, or waiting for you to say something, and, you lack substance. So for me, I hate talking about myself, but, for me, I'm always chasing a trend because, well, not always, but I have to hop on trends to know what kind of audience would, consume my content. So it's really, really important to, sell the sizzle, not the steak, just to get people, on board with your message, to get yourself known, to get your brand known, to get your personal brand known. And then, after that, it's so important, now that you have their attention, it's so important to deliver. And, I do that many times. In the marketing world, you have to kind of herd the cattle, so to speak. And once they're herded, you have to deliver, and it's so important to do that. I do it on a daily basis. I don't know how I do it, but I just do it. Hopefully, that's helpful. What I just said. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I mean, I think, or do you prefer to pronounce it B. Ryan?
Yeah, you could say that. B. Ryan. B. Ryan's fine. B. Ryan Alves. Fine.
All right. Aaron. Anyway, so that was a Key and Peele reference.
Yes.
But yeah, no. So I mean, I get what you're saying. Here's where I would push back a little bit. And you don't have to answer this. Anybody else can answer this too. But here's where I would push back a little bit: is selling the sizzle is fine only if you have a really good steak in the pan, right? But the problem is that people sell sizzle, and really they just have a crappy piece of grizzle sizzling in a pan, right? And they don't realize, and so like it's fine to sell sizzle if you're backing it up with something that's authentically and genuinely good. But if it's not genuinely good, if you're focused solely on the sizzle, then you're never going to capture anyone. They might, open the door and peek in, but when they see the thing on the stove is unedible, the thing in the pan looks like trash that you wouldn't feed your dog, then they're going to turn around and walk away. Right? So I think that's like the sort of proviso to that approach, is like sizzle is great if you can back it up, and only if you can back it up. Right? If you're trying to sell sizzle and you got, a hunk of trash in the pan, sorry, but you're never gonna get anything, never gonna convert anyone, never gonna grow a community, never gonna develop an audience. People are just gonna peek in, look, see it's trash, and turn around and head out the door. What do you think, Dom?
So, Tom, what do you do with the person that's starting out that doesn't have their message down packed yet, and all of a sudden they get 1 view, 2 views, 5 views. It's a month later, they get 1, they get none. I always like to say I've been on a stage with 0 people in the audience. I get 0 views from time to time. People be like, "Oh, you shouldn't tell people that." Yeah, I get 0. I got a TikTok. My most TikTok ever is 240,000. It is not my best work. I think a YouTube with 10 or something like that, Instagram, you know, what were these? But none of those were my best work that got these crazy, that went viral, got 100,000, 240,000. But what do you tell somebody like me when you started that got 0, got 1, got 5? How do you get them to keep going, Tom? When maybe it's a business for them, maybe it's a passion where they love, like, and so I'm pushed back on Tom. You started in production. You did 20 years of production, so you have a vast resume. You don't need any sizzle because you just say, "Oh, by the way, I worked with Tony Bourdain. By the way, I got an Emmy nod." Like it's like an onion. You peel out that thing and you see it because you got 20 years. What do you do to the person just starting? They got nothing. They've never shared a message before. What do they do?
I think people need to understand what views really are, right? Views are window shopping, right? No store has ever, paid their rent from window shopping, right? That's all views are. So people get really caught up in view metrics, and view metrics don't mean anything if they don't translate into like building a community and a loyal audience that keeps coming back, right? Like at the end of the day, if it's a business, you need people to walk in the door. You don't need them to just walk by and point at something in the window and go, "Oh, that's kind of cool," right? And then keep walking. And that's what views are, right? So like I think there's a lot of confusion about what views really mean. At the end of the day, I don't care about views on anything I put out, right? What I care about is the kind of feedback that I get. And a lot of times that feedback doesn't come off social media, right? Like it's almost 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years this year ago that I did a vlog of my training for my Ironman race, right? Where every day I did a daily vlog, only a minute and a half or so, sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes a minute, just a quick training vlog every day, right? And I did, it was hundreds of vlogs over the course of the year, course of the training period. I still have people come up to me, right, in public to talk to me about that vlog that I did. 2 years later, I still have people come up to me. I have people reach out and say that it inspired them to do something, to pursue a passion, to try to get in shape, to try to do a race, right? I have people who come up to me who ask me out of the blue, who I've never met before in real life, come up to me out of the blue and say, "Hey, what are you training for now?" Right? Are you going to bring the vlog back? Are you going to do it again? That's the kind of feedback that actually matters, because those are the people that came in and paid attention, right? And got involved in the community that I was building with that vlog, right? And understood why I was doing it and appreciated the authenticity of it and the vulnerability of it, right? That's the kind of feedback that matters. I genuinely don't know the number of views I've gotten on the most viewed thing that I've ever made. I genuinely don't. I have no idea. That number could be 10,000. It could be 10 million. I have no clue. No idea. I don't look at views. I don't care.
Now,
Right?
when you were in television, though, didn't you look at ratings and things like that?
I did only so far as I had to, but I did it with the understanding that it was a junk metric, that it was a decision. Decisions were being made on a junk metric, right? So like the Nielsen rating system is not, at least the way it was. It's a little bit different now. It's the way it works is different now with streaming and online data gathering and data collection online is very different from when it was when you had to have a Nielsen box in your house, right? But that Nielsen data, when they had a box in your house, right, where they were collecting, they weren't like recording your viewing habits. You had to report what you were doing, what you were watching, right? And we all know how terrible people are at self-reporting, right? They're not good at it, and it's not accurate. And also, there's a lot of argument that statistically their sample sizes were too small. So they were taking a sample size that statistically was too small and trying to to say that it was representative of the entire population of the US, for example, right? But globally in other places as well. And at the end of the day, they would basically, the data would give them a number, but that number wasn't really statistically sound, right? The math didn't math, right? Any scientific paper would have tossed out the data that they were giving them because it wasn't statistically significant. And so at the end of the day, it was a junk metric. I only paid attention to it because that junk metric had nothing to do with whether or not we were putting out something good. It had to do with whether or not people in the ad sales team on the network side could convince advertisers to buy space in the program, which meant that we would keep working on it, that we would get renewed for another season. So like, that's why I paid attention to it, because it meant that I was going to be employed, that my team was going to be employed, right, on the next project, not because I actually cared about it personally for any sort of, validation, right? And that's the thing that I think people get caught up in, is they look at these views for validation. And the way that they're delivered to us are very specifically designed to trigger those kinds of emotions, to give us that sense of validation. Because at the end of the day, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, and I will keep saying it until there's literally no more breath left in me, all social media platforms have the same goal in mind. And their goal is to keep you on the platform as long as possible, right? That's why they don't like it when you link to external places in any of your posts, right? How many times have we heard that from folks on social media? Don't do external links, right? Because they don't like it, because they downrate them. The algorithm downrates those posts. Yeah, of course they do, because it directs people off the platform. They all want the same thing. They do it in different ways, but they all want the same thing. And that thing is for you to stay on the platform as long as possible, because your attention is the commodity, right? And so they feed you these vanity metrics. They feed you these view metrics for you to go, ooh, that feels good. That feels good. I got a whole bunch of views. Ooh, it feels good, right? And they keep feeding them to you, so you'll stay there and you'll keep giving them free content so they can keep selling stuff to advertisers, right? So just know what you're doing. I'm not saying don't post on social media. Just understand what you're doing, what you're participating in, right? And with that understanding, you can couch, you can contextualize those metrics, right? And understand that they really don't mean what you think they mean. They really don't mean as much as you probably give them credit for. So take it with a grain of salt, right? That's all I'm saying. I still post on social media. I post on social media all the time, right? But I do it with a grain of salt. I understand what I'm doing and what I'm participating in, and I don't get caught up in the vanity metrics.
So Tom,
Go on, Brian. We'll go Brian and John.
yeah. So Tom, whether you realize it or not, you have a popcorn trail of content that could lead up to, people are interested in you, and those videos that you have of your training is a popcorn trail to, if you're having a product or a service that people will, walk into once they get to know you. So, we're watching videos of you, people are coming up to you, asking about you, people search for you, people are looking at your content. And, in the end, there should be something there, And in your case, you have a book called Legendeering, which is totally unrelated to your training. So, in your case, again, you have like a popcorn trail leading up to something that people can attach to. Not many people know about that. You're constantly posting on social media, and then Dom said that he had thousands of views on TikTok or whatever social media platform. There should be something attached to that. Having that many views should have some kind of action attached to it, which would benefit not only the viewer but you as well. If your goal is to have a business or a product or service online. Hopefully, I'm making sense and not like really going over above everybody's heads.
No, you're good, man. Let's go. We will keep
No,
rolling.
I want to add into this too.
All right, hold on. Okay, he wants that in. So Brian's saying there should be an ask at some point if you're a business, if you're putting out content. I guess it's on mission, on brand, that you are leading them or funneling them or some aspect of that. So we're going to go out of order. Go on. What were you going to say?
I'm going to say one thing in response to the ask, right? And I don't disagree with you, Brian. There is a sort of trail of breadcrumbs, right? Like, but it's about giving people the opportunity to know me, right? And to understand what I'm about before, they ever get to my website or make a decision or, decide to seek me out for professional reasons, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is a gift has to be a gift. It can't be an ask, right? So if you're gonna share, right? Don't put an ask at the end of everything. I absolutely disagree that things should have an ask. Like anybody that says that, I will absolutely disagree with them. A gift has to be a gift. It cannot be an ask. So don't put a CTA at the end of a call to action at the end of everything. It's a classic mistake, and it'll just lead to people not paying attention to what you have to say. So I just wanted to throw that out. But go ahead, Dom. Take it
Okay,
back.
well, hold on.
Great.
We're going reverse order. Jason, we're going Jason. Well, we're going to do it. We're going Jason, John, Brian Swift. Go on, Jason. We're talking sizzle. We're talking people getting caught up in metrics. We're talking all this stuff. You know what we're talking about. Go on.
Well, I just want to say there's a level, excuse my language, it's a bullshito. It's a martial art of word and mindset play. And views are just an introduction, and it's still the metric is important it's an element of the puzzle or an element of the building of the structure that you're building, in the creator's process. Let's not get away from why you create. I create for me first, and then I express it to the public. How they get to it, I'm always curious of getting exposure. Like, I listen to John and he'll say, hey, keywords. How do you write the title of your story? And what you write in the introduction will bring a level of increments to show, like, hey, if someone goes and search a particular subject or a particular style of creator, when you use the keywords, let's just say if you're just a writer, that's going to pick up on somebody's search. The view is important. The action of interest is important. All of it's important. You cannot get away from that. I've seen so many great creators who don't even get past 10 views. And I think they're so brilliant, but they have a stint or they have a handicap or they have an ego about what they have in their hands. But it's like, no matter what, no matter where you go, it's always an invitation. And yes, there should be a call to action. There should be an ask, but it doesn't have to be what most people think. It's an exchange. I'm looking forward to your next engagement. I'm here to post, but we're going to talk about whatever. We're going to talk about, me and Dominic, we're going to go on a wonderful bike ride next week, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? Thanks for tuning into this episode and looking forward to this next. But however you want to pitch it, it is an ask. You need to have always an ask in something in yourself. It's what drives us. It builds in the purpose. It weaves in the actions of why you do and why you create, whether it's shiny or not. I've seen plenty of shiny people, like you kind of explained, Tom. I've seen plenty of people shine and fall. I've seen plenty of people who talk the big game, including myself. I've talked a big game, but I also, I bring a level of game, and I am not many people's cup of tea. However, when people talk about authenticity, it's the one sizzle word that I'm literally wanting to say, shut up. And I'll tell you why. Because when you tell people that this message that's been going around for the last 5 years of being authentic, you've got to ask yourself, when did you start pivoting out of your actual real interest? Your interest is making you authentic. What you deliver on in that interest is only elements. People sort you out real quick. I could tell plenty of people are fake. I can tell plenty of people are real, but it's what is in the message. It's kind of like what I think Brian was saying that, or no, it was you, Tom, you said this, the steak in the pan. I agree with you on that. But at the end of the day, there is always an ask. It may seem like it's an ask, but it's always an invitation. Are you inviting the public to view what you really are bringing to the table. Even I've heard so many people pitch the laws of attraction. I have heard so many people write books, or even most recent. Let's take an example: the Cat Williams, Shannon Sharp interview. Do you know how many people have made content just on their stuff and ripped it, gave commentary, repurposed a clip, wrote some words? Was that really creative of them? No, it was a shine to bring awareness first of the subject, but then to the creator. Because it's even something's already created once doesn't mean it can't be done better or different. So there's plenty of room for all, but we cannot BS ourselves. I do understand the points. It's like shine versus, the realistic of things. Rick Rubin wrote a wonderful book on creativity, and he says, go where you're interested in, not where others are. Go where your interest is, because you're not the only one. And that's the beautiful thing about being a human being. There's more of us that are interested in more things, or sometimes the same thing. And it makes even the micro. Then it gets to the macro. What's that trending thing? It's like, I do care about what goes trending, but it's not the only thing. Because whatever tells me to keep writing, I keep going. Whatever I keep talking, or tells me to keep, I keep doing. And then when it's done, it's completed, I walk back and I reflect, and then I keep going. When you stop being interested in anything, that's a problem. When you're just trying to copy something, that's a problem. But if you're interested in doing the same thing and improving better each time, then you've got something, and then it evolves. And you know what? And like when I see Tom's background and I see his picture, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, he is so awesome for doing all this. Tom is so awesome, and he's got the visual displays that I like. I want to do that, and so I listen and I watch, and I mimic in some degrees, and then sometimes it's like, okay, I take in that element and I go back, and then it's like, okay, well, what can I do with what I already have, not with what I don't have, So that's where I stand.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to clarify one thing, because I think you kind of hit on something that I think is a common kind of point of confusion for folks, right? And when I say a gift has to be a gift and not an ask, there is room to extend an invitation within that, right? And there's a difference between an invitation and an ask. And I'll do a very, very quick analogy, and then we're going to go to John J. Wiley. So here's the analogy for you, right? If I said to Dom, right, hey Dom, you and your family are invited over to dinner at our house next week, right? And Dom would say, he would do the standard thing and say, can we bring anything, right? Because Dom's a nice guy, and that's the polite thing to do, right? So he would say, can we bring anything? I'd say, no, don't worry about it. Just bring yourselves. We're happy to have you. That's an invitation, right? And the difference would be the difference between that and an ask is if I said to Dom, hey Dom, come over to dinner at my house next week. Bring an appetizer and dessert, right? That's an ask. That's not an invitation, right? So there's a very clear difference, I believe, between an ask and an invitation. You can always extend an invitation, right? But do not go asking in everything that you do, right? You can always extend an invitation, give them the opportunity to decide for themselves, but do not always put an ask, right, at the end of everything you do. I'm telling you.
Tom, I got a question about that. Is an ask within a style, or is an invitation a style of an ask?
No, an invitation is absolutely something different than an ask, right? Because an ask is an imposition and an invitation is an offer.
That's still you
All
get down to
right,
the same
come
thing.
on, let's get to Jay
No,
Wiley.
that's an
hold on,
argument of semantics, man.
Stop. Both. All right, John Jay,
Let's go to
come
John.
on, John Jay, talk about trends, talk about vanity metrics. We're going to dig into this some more. Go on, John.
First of all, I'm going to use an analogy.
Do it.
Racing.
Do it.
Drag racing, it's torque that gets your car moving. It's horsepower that keeps it going and accelerating. So when it comes to sizzle versus substance, it's sizzle that gets people's attention. But if you don't have substance, they are not going to consume your content. They're going to bail on you quickly, and they won't binge listen to your content. So where I split hairs is I put out content for a reason. It's for the consumer. It's not for me. People can talk semantics all they want, but the things I look for is I don't do videos, all right. But I had a client that was doing videos. He goes, "Well, I'm getting great views on Instagram." Okay, let's take a look at the insights. And 98% of those views were the previews. People doing the thumb scroll, less than 7 seconds. People were not staying for the content because she didn't get their attention with any sizzle. She did. I repeat that. She didn't get their attention with any sizzle. And then they didn't even bother biting on it. So here's another analogy. When you go fishing, the moment a trout is in trouble is not when they stop what they're doing and go after your lure. It's when they stop what they're doing and notice it. That's when a trout is in trouble because instinct kicks over. You've got to have sizzle to get people's attention. But if you don't have substance, we could talk about substance all day long. And quite honestly, I disagree with a lot of what Tom says, but I'm not here to dispute that. If you don't have substance, people are not going to hang around and they won't come back. So find the fine balance between the two, but focus on if you don't get their attention, nothing is ever going to happen. End of story.
John Jay, so somebody just starting out, what do they do? What do they do when they see somebody with 100, 1,000, 10, whatever numbers they don't have? What do they do?
Well, the very first thing to do is realize that it's like an iceberg effect. What you see is the small minority over the surface. The vast majority of work goes below the surface. You don't know if they're doing paid advertising. You don't know if they've got a crew that does marketing. You don't know anything. They'll leave breadcrumbs. They'll give you some ideas. But the very first thing I would do is I would suggest to people is when you start your video, audio, your titles, all of your social media posts, everything, never, ever, ever use the words I, me, or mine. Focus on you. Focus on who you want to consume your content and get their attention. That's the first and foremost thing I would do. And start with things like photos that we know get high engagement, that don't have links to outside platforms and social media. Uh, and then look at how you develop a community. And then of that community members, I'll use podcast as example. If you get 100,000 people following you on Facebook, realize this: only about 43% of Americans consume podcasts. 43%. That means 57% never do. And means 50% of your audience probably never will. But that doesn't mean you can't create use and revenue streams based off their community involvement, their engagement. Focus on engagement, the sizzle again, but you got to have substance. Otherwise, it's a losing battle. Hopefully that answers your question.
That was good, man. I love it. And that engagement is such a powerful thing. Tom mentioned engagement. So Julie Loken had a question here, and this is going to mess with Tom, I think. But Julie Loken, she says, I'm going to look in my comments, so let me read this. Why do
I
social
never
media?
want to mess with Tom, by the way.
Well, it's a good question. Why do social media if no one views it? She says, is it a vanity metric? So then my question would be, if no one's viewing it, is it vanity just in general? If you're not, because on one hand, if you're making it for yourself, but if you're really, so interesting. So what do you do? I guess John, Tom, go on. If nobody views it, why do it?
I would just jump in and say this. You've got to look at some of the metrics. And Julie made a great point. If you create content and no one consumes it, you're going to stop. That's the leading cause of pod fade. If and I'll use Tom as an example. The shows he worked on, yeah, you wanted the best substance possible. With radio, you want the best substance possible. Nielsen ratings are a flawed metric. However, that's what the entire industry goes by, and that's what they decide whether or not they're going to continue on with the show. So, if you want to make money, you got to look at the metrics, not previews, but how many actually go to, in my case, podcasts. How many go to your website? How much traffic do you deliver daily? How many are consumers of your show? How many downloads do you get? Are you increasing? Once they start downloading, they stay long enough and listen to the content. What's your average listen rate? Those are all metrics that matter. If you want to generate any kind of revenue, you've got to look at that information. In Tom's defense, when we look at previews and social media, that doesn't mean impressions. How many impressions are delivered in Newsbreak or Facebook doesn't really matter. It's how many people actually read or engage with your content that matters.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with John in the case of like television or radio. That data does make a difference, because if the goal is to generate revenue from the content, then like directly from the content, i.e. the content is the revenue generator, right? Then absolutely all of that matters. And John's 100% right. Like the Nielsen ratings are, I always call them a junk metric. And the conceit in the industry is that we're all going to agree to follow this junk metric. We all know that it's not significant, but we're just going to all agree to follow it anyway, right? That's the sort of conceit within the industry. The other thing I would say, though, is that content is not necessarily always designed to be, or meant to be for a lot of people, the revenue generator. Like when you're talking about content to develop a community around a brand, the content is not designed to generate revenue. The content is designed to generate awareness for the brand, to create value for the brand, but is not designed to directly generate revenue. And so there's a slightly different relationship, I would argue, in that case, between those statistics, those metrics, like like views, viewership, and when I talk about viewership, I'm talking about people who actually watch the content, not people who scroll past it, and the social media platforms count that as a view. I think that's a clear example of how they're feeding you vanity metrics, right? If somebody watching it for 3.5 seconds counts as a view, like they didn't watch your content. If your content is 90 seconds long, 3.5 seconds, they have no idea what that content was. They just scrolled on by, right? So complete vanity metric. But if you're talking about engaging viewership down the line, right, to build community around a brand and awareness around a brand, then those numbers should be looked at differently, like through a different lens, is what I'm saying. It depends on what the goal of the content is, right? So that's kind of my perspective, is that for me, the goal of the content's a little bit different.
Yeah, it is. And I would say this: if all I focus on was branding and no one consumed my content, I'd be zero. I'd be out of business years ago.
There you go. Thank you, John. All right, Julie, you brought that up. I know Julie's on a plane, so I didn't know if she could talk or not, but then she did chime in. So Julie, go on, if you can.
Well, I'm just about ready to take off. So, but yeah, no, I love to hear. I think Tom and John, it's fascinating for me to hear their different positions, because they're both right, and they both have different visions for the content they produce on social media. So I just love to kind of hear them chop it out, if you will.
Good point, Julie. And in knowing why you're putting out the content. So like, let's say me, Motivation Champs. I have a goal to put out inspirational content 24/7. Inspiration, positivity, smiles. 24/7. That means on all social platforms, the authors that are writing books. If you are in Kansas at night, hopefully you could find one of their books at the store. Hopefully you could, and if the bookstore closes at 10, hopefully you could go on TikTok and find inspirational content. And if your TikTok goes down, hopefully you could go over to Motivation Champs and find articles on the website. And then when that goes down, maybe you could come to Creative Con and get inspirational content live and in person there. So my objective is inspirational content 24/7. Now it is also brand recognition, name recognition. You see me out there without two heads. Yeah, I want to be right back. Tom just said, be right back. This is a side note. I told my daughter the other day, it says BRB. All this time I thought I said to somebody the other day, I thought BRB meant bathroom break, but now I found out from my daughter that it means be right back. So anyway, side note. Okay, Brian Swift, where you weigh in? Brian Swift, where you weigh in on the views? Views, metrics, do you need them? How do you look at them? What are you doing?
Wow. I mean, I agree a lot with what everybody said. Some of what Tom said, some of what John said, some of what Brian said, and um, I think we all have to take our own journey, and because this is not an exact science, so I think we all have to take our own journey, and I think the key to that is the authenticity. Whether you're trying to shine, if that's who you are, then try to shine. If shine isn't a big deal to you, then just be yourself. Um, we used to call it in sales. We used to call it big hat, no cattle. So you're the guy's walking around with a big hat, but he has no cattle on the farm. He's just walking around like he has like he has a big herd, and it's out there. And that just is some people. They are originally that way, and for them, they can work their way through life and be that way. For others, um, it doesn't work. As far as metrics, man, you really can't worry about where you stand compared to anybody else. Um, and I don't know if it was Tom or John who said this, that you don't know how long that person's maybe been doing it. You don't know if he's throwing a lot of money at it. Um, you don't know if he's got a team of people. So I think sometimes comparing what you've done to other people, um, has more downside than upside. I think if you can gain some knowledge from collaborating with that person and how they did it, you're better. You're better off. But um, again, and is it's been said, you know, those looks and those people who joined, or the amount of people who've run past it, if they're 5 seconds and out, it really doesn't have any meaning. So I'm all about just being yourself, and your community will find you. Uh, but I believe it takes a lot longer than a lot of people pose it to be. It's not simple. It's not easy. There is no one exact formula. So I think you have to manage your expectations tremendously when you're doing any of this stuff. I'm complete.
Hey, Brian, good stuff. How many people say, and I want to just take a quick pause here to congratulate everybody in this room that's on the journey for still being on the journey. I wonder how many people have started before you, after you, during the time you started, and already quit. Mr. Swift, how many people have you seen quit while you were out doing your thing? Like, okay, so, oh, Brian, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a radio show. I'm going to write a book. How many quit before you think they even gave it a real shot?
It's hard to put a number on that, but there's been a handful. I think the biggest portion are people who never get started, and I don't know if there's any way of knowing that. But the people who have failed to get started, I think that's a huge number. And whether it's because of fear, whether it's because of lack of knowledge, whether it's you know self eliminating doubts, whatever that may be, that number I think is much greater. But yeah, there's a lot of people out there that, I mean, look at some of the conversations we've had with people where they've got 20 podcasts already, but they haven't started their podcast channel. They're I believe they're just delayed. There's still something in their way from getting going, even though kudos, you've got 20 podcasts put together, but billboard in the desert really doesn't get you anywhere. You got to get out there. You got to be willing to fail. You've got to be ready to make changes. And I don't know. And Mike, this was going to be my question to Tom. How many people, a percentage, how many, and I'll ask you, Dom, what percentage of people do you think, Tom talked about being ahead of the curve. Once you get in, it's too late. How many people, percentage wise, do you think are ahead of the curve? What do you think, Dom?
How many people are ahead of 10? Only the people that, when it comes to, let's say, Jason, because he was talking before. Jason, if Jason's going to go out and do his thing and be him 100%, you're ahead of the curve on that. If Dom's going to no matter what, put out inspirational, motivational content, shit that makes you smile. And people say, well, why is he on a podcast? Well, because I'm trying to put out stuff that makes you smile. Why is he on the show where they bike and hike around? Well, because I'm trying to put out motivating stuff that makes you smile. Why is he working on books with people about hope? Well, I'm hoping it's inspirational content that makes you smile. But as far as on somebody else's journey, I'm way behind. To Brian, I hear you. I think it becomes to if you're walking your own route, you're doing good. If you're trying to follow somebody else, like well, Gary Vee has a whole team. Gary Vee's been doing it for 20 years. I always sometimes I'll work with authors too that have the finances to jump the line. Like there's a lot of things you can do that you could hire a production team. You could pay to have videos done. You could pay to have marketing teams. Okay, well it's going to get you ahead. Or you could bootstrap it. Well, when you're bootstrapping and doing it all on your own, it takes time. It's going to take longer than those people that the different finances got them to that point. So that's my answer. Tom, you want to weigh in on that? And we're going to Prof T.
Yeah, I was going to say very, very, very few. Like the number of people who are sort of setting the trends, right? Like in order to be ahead of the curve on a trend, you have to be the one setting the trend, essentially, right? Or in the very, very, very first adopters of a trend before it becomes popular, before it starts trending, right? So before it's a trend. So you have to be one of those trend setters. And that's a very, very small number. And the other sort of like part of that is that's generally not a number, that's generally not a group that's consistent over time, right? That group is kind of like constantly changing because there is no sort of, formula for setting a trend, right? There are a myriad of reasons why something becomes popular at a particular moment in time. And there are so many variables that have to line up that there's no way you can control for all of them, right? So nobody is a long-term trend setter, period, right? Like there isn't somebody who's like figured out and they've been setting trends for 20 years, right? It's kind of not how it works, right? So in terms of like chasing trends, like there's a very small number and that number is constantly, the constituents of that group are constantly changing.
You go Swifty. You want to rebut? Okay, you good?
No, thanks. No, I agree with them. I mean, it's like when they put out here are the best 5 stocks to invest in. It's really almost too late. The people who've really made money that they've gotten in, they're just trying to continually drive the price up. That percentage of people that are that ahead that have that kind of information are such a small percentage that if you're constantly comparing what you're doing to them, you're going to lose. Your mindset's going to get blown away, and you're going to quit. That's why I think being authentic is so critical.
Yeah.
Incomplete.
Thank you. And I'll give you full disclosure. We talk about view counts and things like that. I want 1 billion views. I want 100 million, but I want them to enjoy my content. I want them to believe in it. I don't want them to be because I'm dancing. I don't want them to be because I'm doing some goofy eating salt or something. I want them to be because I've, impacted so many people and they look at it and say, man, wow, that was really cool. Share it with the next person, share it with the next person, share it with the next person. And then there are times where I use social media a different way. And just to stir the pot a little bit, I would say 1 out of 20 of my posts, 1 out of 10 of my posts, there is going to be I'd be like, hey, buy Brian P. Swift's book, Developing True Grit. Here's the link. To me, that's an ask. Most of the time I'm trying to, I think in my world, how I perceive it, let's stir you guys up here. I perceive it as I give. Here's inspiration. But when it comes to me to an ask is when I'm like, hey, follow me here. Hey, buy this book. Did you know I wrote a book about my mom and Alzheimer's? Here's the link. That I consider that a more direct ask. Hey, come to my class. There's a price on it and I'm selling, so that's how I figure it. There's almost like I ask, and there's a direct what would you call? There's an offer, ask, offer, and acceptance. Is that be? I wonder if that's a relationship. Okay, Prof T, go on. Prof T is Professor T, so she's pretty smart and knows about here. Go on.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. My head is spinning all the conversation. I was just like thinking about a lot of different things. I love Tom's analogy of being asked to dinner somewhere. That is a real life issue. I have been invited to things, I'm sure we all have. And you have been asked, bring your own bottle, bring your own food. That's called a potluck. So there is a very big difference of an ask and an invite. So I love that analogy. And I think for me, I'm just gonna give you, an analogy. If you all remember back in the days of the Wild Wild West, and they had the hucksters come by, and they had preachers doing pop-up tents. And I'm reminded of a story that I had heard about. This preacher kept going to different places, opening his tent, and would wait for people to come and hear him speak. And yeah, he thought he was a good speaker. And time again, no one would show up. Lo and behold, one night, one lone cowboy showed up and sat in a chair. And the preacher waited a little bit. Nobody else showed up. So he went down to the man in the audience and said, "Sir, I'm so sorry. There's no one here except you. I'm not going to preach." And the cowboy said, "Well, I ain't no preacher or nothing, but it would seem to me if I had food out for my cattle and one came out, I would feed it." So, with that said, the preacher preached a 2.5, 3 hour message, came down off the podium, said to the cowboy, "Well, cowboy, how was that?" And he said, "Well, I ain't no big fancy speaker, but I tell you what, if I had my cattle and only one came out, I'd certainly feed them, but I wouldn't dump the whole load." I love that analogy because I think sometimes we overload with content. People overload with social media and overload with asks and invites. And um, so I'm going to leave you with that analogy. Feed content, of course, uh, care for your audience, but be respectful, and certainly don't give an overload. Thank you. This is Prof T from Philly, where it's crazy out. We had a crazy storm last night, and we are all doing well. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Prof T, back to you.
Prof T, great analogy. I appreciate that. That you can make an impact on one person. If you were a preacher speaking, speak to one, you'd feed cattle, good stuff. Okay, I don't think we hit, I'm skipping to Billy just because I don't think we hit Billy yet. So Billy Dragon, and we'll come back to you, Brian, or anybody else. We'll keep this conversation going. Billy, views, watches, Amazon influencer. I guess you got to have people watching and viewing. Go on, Billy, teach us.
I don't know about teaching you about metrics, but I definitely think that they are a key part of anything that you do, because if you don't know where you're at, then you don't know how to create a map to get where you're going. Like, you got to have a starting place. And so no matter what your goal is, if it's to make people smile, laugh, or swipe their credit card, you got to know what you're up against. You got to know what what you're doing. I mean, I think that's part of, sure, there's hobbyists, and I think that's the biggest line in the sand. And I think a lot of content creators battle this all the time. I think a lot of artists battle this all the time. Like, I want to do this. I love this. I'm passionate about this. I want to do this full time, but I don't want to run a business, but I don't want to do the metrics, but I don't want to look at my bank account, but I don't want to do the hard stuff. And I think that's the biggest difference I see in the content creator community is there's a lot of people who want to do a lot of cool stuff, but nobody wants to do the back end stuff that it takes to continue to drive the train in the direction of doing the thing that you want to do and creating space, brain wise, monetarily, whatever that looks like, for you to continue to show up and create in that space. And so for me, man, I think metrics are huge, regardless if I'm doing a hobby podcast or if I'm doing something I want to monetize or whatever. I always think of it as a business first and then content creation second. And so I'm always there. And then for the call to action, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So, anytime that I'm creating content, I'm bringing value. And I think that's a big part of it too. Like early on in my content creation world, I didn't have a lot to say. And what I did have to say wasn't very valuable. So therefore, I never asked anybody to do anything. Hell, I knew so little about creating content. I didn't even ask people to follow me, like because I didn't even know. And then once I got into it and started realizing, how it worked, how I worked, how I could create a business out of content creation, how I could show up and do those elementary things over and over and over and get results, the results that I wanted, the results that I designed my business to do, the results I designed my content to have, then that's, I started learning from those metrics. I started learning from, here's what I got to output to get the input that I want. And I think there's also a give back portion. This year, 2024, I've been an Amazon influencer for 2 years. I did really well last year. I've gotten through a full calendar year. I feel confident in my abilities to show people the way. I mean, I've put in the work, I've put in the sweat equity. And it's just now, after 2 years, that I'm like, I even feel confident enough to just give back, not even really ask for anything. So I'm doing a couple of workshops for free. I'm gonna throw it all out there and go, here's what you want. You get Amazon influencer, you got access to do these couple things. Here's how I can go make $100,000 next year if you want it. And I think, for me, it's just part of that process. But I wouldn't even got to that place if I didn't look at the metrics, if I didn't look at the numbers, if I didn't come into Clubhouse and, ask people to go follow me on a social media platform so I can get qualified to be a part of the Amazon thing. And I think when you are, and you guys have said it multiple times, genuine or authentic, people can get that. They'll get it. They'll support you and they want to support you. Now, if you show up every day asking for $5 on the side of this social media road, they may not support you. But if you come in here and you start dumping value and people are making changes in their life and losing weight and smiling and making money or whatever you're trying to help them do, then to ask for a follow, to ask for a like, a share, and it's also social proof. It's like if I get on something and I go over to Tom's Instagram and he has a video that says, do these 5 things and you can make $50 tomorrow, whatever, with your video camera and your phone, and then it has 1 like, I'm probably like, oh fuck, I'm not looking at that. Like nobody even thinks that's valuable. But if I go over there and it has 50 likes or 100 likes, then I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'm gonna take a second look at this. So for me, I look at those engagements, I look at those comments, in my mind, right or wrong, maybe it's the way they programmed it to be, I will put a higher value on that with higher engagement. I will look at what other people are doing and go, oh, okay, this might be worth my time to take a look at. So I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. But yeah, as far as metrics, quick and easy of it, if you don't know where you're at, you don't know how to get to where you're going. So you got to know where you're at, in my opinion, at all times. I look at all my numbers every single day, all day long. And I look at no one else's numbers because I don't give a shit what they're doing. I'm showing up to be doing what I'm doing. And if I have friends in the circle and they're crushing it, I go, okay, what are you doing? Oh, that doesn't fit my business model. I'm not approved for TikTok, even though you can make 30% commissions over there. I'm staying on Amazon. I'm gonna keep focused. I'll see you in a couple months. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
I think, Billy, like the big difference between what you're talking about and what I was talking about, and maybe it makes sense to make this distinction or draw this distinction, is, for you, it is a business first approach because the content you're creating is the sales mechanism for your business, right? Like, so it's very much.
But it was this way. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to clarify. I didn't start with Amazon. That's not my first content creation thing. I started podcasting with a business in mind as entrepreneur first. And I don't think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people start off like, oh, I get this thing I want to talk about. And then they get into it 6 months, a year and go, shit, this is expensive. It takes up a lot of time. Now how I can make money. And they've put all the pieces together the wrong way. So that was the distinction I was trying to make, was just like, I think there's a clear difference of creator and entrepreneur or business owner. And a lot of times it's flipped around from the creators I hang out with anyway. Sorry, back to you.
Right. No, absolutely, Billy. Like, and that makes perfect sense, because what you're talking about is the content creation is part of the business model, right? And I think the difference is, like, you're talking about content creation as a product, right? That drives, whether it directly is the sale, like is the thing you're selling, i.e. you sell ad space in it, like a radio show or a television show, or it directly drives sales for products that you're representing in that show or talking about in that content, right? So the content is the product or the sales mechanism, right? And that's not the case for everyone. Like, not everybody, for me, for example, like I could care less if I ever got $1 for any of the content that I put out on social media, right? Like, I don't ever, like, my goal is not to get paid for that content, right? My goal ultimately down the line is to fulfill this sort of broader mission that I'm on, to humanize the world of business through better communications, right? So that's the goal. So our goal, I think part of it is, like, different goals lead to different procedures, right? Like, if you have a different goal, you take a different path. And like, so that's kind of the different, like, perspectives that we're coming at this from. And just full transparency, what I'm saying for me and for somebody who is like-minded to what I'm doing, who is is sort of mission first, business later, right? Or business second, or business after, right? Then they're going to follow a different path than you, and neither one is better than the other. They're just different, right? Different isn't better or worse. It's just different. So what you're doing makes perfect sense for what your goals are, right? And if I had the same goals as you, then I would be in the metrics, like you are also, right? Because that is a direct representation of whether or not I'm going to generate revenue in my business. But
would it be a direct representation for you? Because I hear this often as well. Like, I don't care about the numbers, I don't care about the metrics. But you just said you wanted to shift an entire industry or industries or model. I don't see how you could go, "Hey, I'm going to work hours on this content. I'm going to put it up. It's going to get one person to comment, one person to engage, and I'm not going to reflect to see how could I, because it's a good message, but it's just what's wrong with that? Like, is it delivered wrong? Is it whatever?" And I think that is the metric. It's not the metric for me to go to sleep at night and go, "Oh man, I got 20 likes on my Instagram." It's really the metric of going, what do I do different to tweak it to reach more people to make the bigger impact? No matter what you're doing, if you're selling cookies or if you're just trying to make people laugh and smile, it's like, how can I deliver that a little bit differently in this digital space to reach more people? And I think that's the biggest thing, that it's like, you have to look at those numbers. I don't care who you are, like, in my mind anyway. Otherwise, it's like, how do I reach the million people I want to reach? Even if I don't want anything from them, I just want to give them content. How do I measure the effectiveness of the impact that I want to have, that I believe I can have? But if I'm not looking at the numbers, I don't know where I'm at. Like, how am I
right.
going to do that? That'd
Yeah.
be my only question for you.
Yeah, no, and I get that. And my answer is, I'm not trying to reach 1 million people. I'm not trying to reach as many people as I can. I'm trying to reach the right people, right? And you could definitely turn around and argue that, again, go look at your metrics. But I would say this. Yesterday, I shared this post on Facebook. It was, I think on Monday, I shared it on LinkedIn. But I've very recently found out that my book Legendeering was put on a list of 5 books to read in 2024. And that list was published by and written by somebody who is the executive director of a entrepreneurship center at UConn in Connecticut, right? And I'm very excited about having Legendeering put on that list. And the reason why I'm so excited is because if my book delivers on its promise for her, which I believe it will, then she is going to put that book in the hands of a cohort of young entrepreneurs and invite me to come speak to them. And I'm going to be able to connect with the right people, right? And that came about All of that happened because a friend of mine shared a post about my book coming out. She commented on that, or she liked that post, and I went through and I sent her a direct message and connected with her on LinkedIn, right? And it was that simple. I made that connection, and it was all through one post on LinkedIn, and I have no idea how many people exactly that post reached. I have no idea how many any subsequent posts that I've reached, how many people they've reached. It was because of one message that I sent to one person through LinkedIn. So again, it's not about how many people, and none of that information came to me through metrics, right? So to me, it's not about how many people I can reach. It's about reaching the right people and connecting with the right people. And so I don't care if I reach 1 million people, because at the end of the day, I could shout my message to 1 million people. It might not land for any of them, but if I can get one person who has influence over the group of people that I'm trying to reach, that I know can actually create the impact that I want to see in the world down the line, that's far more valuable to me than 1 million people seeing a post about my book. So that, I think that's the difference, is, again, it's the goals, right? Like, what's the goal? My goal is not sales, it's impact. And those are not necessarily one for one in my mind. So yeah. So anyway, so that's my thought. Dom, what do you think? Take the reins, buddy. Or
Okay, you
get
do
stuck
good.
in
I
this
don't know, man. Yeah, we are stuck in a. Cause what if I say I want 1 million of the right people? So I'll use the hashtag that says the right people and whatever those things that they might be looking at. So now I got 1 million of the right people. So yeah, it's such a slippery slope here. All right, dragon. We learned what we learned the meaning of the dragon last week. So hey, JC, you have a event on Thursday, right? What do you got going on, man? Weigh in on all this.
Yeah, well, we have an event. So yeah, just I was just thinking when I created that, thinking about a lot of the stuff that we talk about, but also focusing on the Creative Con, event, which pretty much pertains to this conversation. There's a lot of things out there like Creative Con that have huge value, and talking about, and I'll weigh in on it. But if you look at this event, Creative Con, you guys, those that are involved or engaged in it, know its value. But you got to stop and ask yourself, is it that not enough people know about, or do enough people know about it and just don't care to go? Right. So the idea of the event on Thursday would be to give and have some of you amazing people sharing some, golden bits that, will help people share their story with the world. So, I'm curious to see how many people will show up for, what promises to be a great event. I'm going to host it with Julie. It's going to be live on LinkedIn, and anybody that shows up there is going to walk away with some value, right? So that's what's going on Thursday. But as it pertains to this topic, and I'll just weigh in on it quick. And I love what I love about Billy, I don't know if he's still here. Yeah, Billy's still here. What I love about Billy is how open he is to the coin, right? Because we can very easily have an opinion about something, which I've spent most of my life having an opinion about things. This is what I like, this is what I don't like. I do this, I don't do that. So I just want to give you a shout out, Billy. I love how you're just results driven, and you're like, hey, forget about what I think. I'm looking for results. So like that. But here's what's interesting. I noticed something with people that I very much up to. So, I can look at some great social media content people, like even the likes of Gary Vee, or my buddy Jim Quick, or just these people that just have these like massive, massive followings and engagement, right? So the first thing I noticed of interest was you could look at people that have like millions of subscribers, and then take that into account, look at their posts and see how many people like, and all of a sudden that 17,000 like means nothing, because you start to look and say, okay, million subscribers, I get 17,000 likes. That's a super shitty following if you look at it in that way. So that was one thing I took note of. And then the other thing I took note of when I would look at their comments, because I was enamored by comments, because like you, Tom, I want engagement. And I've done everything from bullshit strategies to authentic. So I've done it all. Um, but what I notice about these people that I follow and I love their content, and obviously other people do, and they're multimillionaires, is if you look at the comments, it's way lower than the likes, first of all. So you look at engagement, and then the next thing you do is you notice that there are tons of bullshit in there, fake. Like, I don't know if you guys ever take the time to go through these juggernaut comments, but a lot of them are coming from fake robot accounts and all that stuff. So that got me saying what I teach everybody to say, hmm, interesting. So I started playing that game of like, you know, is the value in promoting yourself as someone that has a lot of followers, or that label you as phony baloney if you don't show the engagement. But then the other question I was asking myself, which I think is the controversial part of this topic, and I'll throw this to you, Tom, because I'm with you, Tom. I'm very much like you, and I don't care about looking like I'm cool as much as serving people and helping people. Um, However, here's the interesting caveat that brings you to an inflection point. The question is the people that you, and I'll use you an example because you've got this amazing book coming out, and Tom, provides nothing but value. Um, the people that you have the opportunity to serve and help, which is what you are looking for, if what Billy is saying is true, that there are certain people out there that would engage with you if they saw you were a juggernaut, you have to acknowledge, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm just throwing this in to fuck with everybody. I'm just saying you have to acknowledge the fact that if that is a way or a vehicle of bringing the kind of stuff that you're looking to do on a mission basis, is it wrong? Right? So that's the interesting thing about social media, because let's back up from it and recognize that social media is 90% bullshit, right? And we're all playing in it. So that means that to a certain degree, we're full of shit. So all I'm saying is there value? Yes, in having this illusion that you are somebody, in the sense that it does bring quality people to the table that might not have come otherwise. Now, I'm not sharing this as a strategy of mine. This is Deep Thoughts by Dragon, but I'm just saying that's what I like about people like Billy, and that's why he's throwing up the 100, because if I say no to something indefinitely, like let's say I say, I'm not going to do anything that's phony baloney, that makes it look like I'm somebody. If I say that and I back up and I stand strong there, I'm also saying that I'm not going to allow people that need me to find me, in a sense. So I know that that's deep shit, but that's my thing.
No, I don't. Look, JC, I'm with you, man. I think the difference is, and again, like I'm kind of parsing and living in the nuance here. Excuse me, living in the nuance here, but really the difference is that I'm not sort of like, I'm not anti having a big following on social media, right? Like I'm not anti building a big following, right? I'm anti building a big following for the sake of building a big following, right?
Okay.
I'm anti
It's like
that.
money. It's like money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. With you. Right. Um, you know, so I'm not anti growing a big following. I'm just anti doing it for its own sake. Right. Because that is 100% a vanity project, and that's not what I'm about. Um, but the other thing too is that I'm also acknowledging who I am as a person, right? And what my values are. And at the end of the day, I'm never going to be the person, no matter how many times somebody tries to convince me that, or tells me that I should pay more attention to metrics, or I should live in the data. It's not who I am. I'm never going to be that person. I've never been
All right,
that
so
person.
let's play in the dragon pool, and I'll challenge that just for the sake of a good conversation. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Bring it
So
on, bring it on. Tread lightly, and this pool is shallow, though. Go on, go
yeah.
on.
So what I'm saying, and obviously I have nothing but respect and admiration for Tom, and and I also know that very often I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Just side claim there. So if what you're saying is true, and I'm going to just make sure I understand what you're saying is you're okay with having a big following, but you're not. What you're saying is you're not interested or okay with having a following for the sake of having a following, correct?
Yeah, or pursuing growing a following
Yeah,
just for the
pursuing growth for the sake of
growth.
looking like you've grown. Okay. Because
Yeah.
you're and that's because Tom's authentic and he wants to deliver. Okay. So and then also that prompts your decision to not check metrics that show growth, right? And I get that. So what I'm saying is what if you found out through trial or through somebody else that you trusted that focusing on growth and checking the metrics because it helps you focus and grow gives you what it is that you're seeking on the other side. So that there is why I think it is important to check the metrics of growth. Not you don't have to say I'm checking the metrics of growth because I'm focused on growth. You're focused on results and engagement. But if I'm focused on growth and checking the metrics to facilitate the growth because leverage is what I want, then there's value. And I would only challenge, and this is I've got some people in my life that confront me when I'm talking. I would only challenge that um, by not being open, also keeping a wall or a door closed to a potential plethora of wonderful people that need service. So it's like if I was going to step in, to try something, and I went out there and I focused on the growth and I checked the metrics, and 3 months from now, Tom had 1 million views. Tom wouldn't give a shit about that, but if Tom would give a shit about it if he all of a sudden impacted more lives because of it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and look, you're not wrong. What I'm saying is that's just not who I am. I'm never going to be the guy that lives in the data because it's just not me, right? Like something that's been consistent for me with throughout my life is if I'm not interested in something, I cannot force myself to do it, right?
Absolutely.
Like, so I'm
The
not
reason why
interested.
you'd force yourself to do anything, especially something out of your comfort zone, is because all of a sudden stands in the way of getting what you want.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, like at the end of the day, it's not that I can't. Like I have a degree in psychology. I had to do it like 300 level statistics in college to get my degree, right? So like I can do the math, like I can do the statistics, I can interpret and understand the statistics, right? Like I can look at the metrics and understand them and make sense of them. I just don't care. And if I don't care, then I can never force myself to do it. At the end of the day, like I don't disagree with what you're saying, that I definitely could be leaving opportunities for impact on the table by not focusing on growing my community on social media. I don't disagree with that, right? But I also know that I'm never going to be metrics driven to pursue that growth. So my answer to you is if when I get to the point where, and this may happen sooner rather than later for my business, like when I get to the point where it makes sense to pursue it and invest in it, then my solution is to pay someone who loves that stuff to pursue that growth strategy with me, right? To help to analyze the numbers, to dig into the data, to look at it, to help develop a strategy, and then I can create the content. I can do the creative problem solving part to deliver the content that follows that strategy, right?
Yeah,
But like,
and that right there is a whole other topic. Is, you know, what Tom just said is, love you, by the way, and what you stand for. But what Tom just said is another topic for you guys another day. Is when you have something that you deem is important, but it's not your thing, that's when you start to delegate. You know, there's two reasons. One is you're overwhelmed and you need help, but the other one is you delegate things out that you're either not good at or you don't like doing.
Yeah.
So to facilitate the growth. But that's important because I think some people might have misconstrued that Tom has these rules and he will never do anything. But I think what you're saying is it's just not who you are. And then, but you will delegate it out should it be important.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I'm not anti-growth. I'm just anti putting data, right? For me, this is just for me. I'm not saying everybody should do this. I'm saying for me, I'm anti putting the data first because my end goal of any of the content that I put out, right, is not to directly develop revenue from that content. That is not the goal. So if that's not the goal, all of a sudden the metrics mean a lot less, right? In terms
I
of
hear you.
viewership,
I
right?
hear
In
you.
terms of, likes and whatever. A lot of those metrics mean a lot less if it's not my primary revenue generator. It's
Got to
just,
And
jump
by
in
the
really
by the
quick.
way, all of this
hold
makes
on. Let's
Tom
go, Jason.
makes
Make
it
a
more
make
attractive.
JC, make a quick point, and then we're going to go to John real quick. Go on.
I was just going to say, you know, interestingly enough, in sales, they teach you about the no sale sale. And because of who Tom really is, it makes him attractive to follow. I just want to state.
There you go. Right on. Okay, John, go on, brother.
Yeah, I had to jump off for a little bit. I was doing my
No
radio
worries.
show.
No
So
worries.
I'm just point out something. And Tom and I agree on a lot of things. We strongly disagree on a few things. So, but Tom wrote a book. Now, is there a price on that book that people have to purchase? And how did you don't have to answer this, but they use metrics to determine the cost of that book. So you say this all the time, but the metrics do matter. The metrics that you don't care about is the ones you discuss, where it's about impressions and previews and all that stuff. But yeah, you care very much whether your book sells or not, don't you?
Oh no! Oh no! Oh man, we are.
And by the
Hold
way,
on.
here's
Yeah,
a
Here we
link
hold.
up
go.
top
Here
of the
we
Hey,
page at
did
the
you
go.
top as
hear,
well.
John? Were you here when Tom made a point? I just want to. This was an interesting point that it isn't that he doesn't care. I think it is that it isn't his thing. So like
Yeah,
maybe
it's
down the
not.
road, yeah. So
I was off doing
yeah,
my radio show, but
yeah. I
I
wondered
want
if that
people.
because he was talking about maybe delegating at some point. But go on,
I
John. I'm
did
sorry I
speak up.
cut you off. Go on first. Go on, John.
So if you have the ability to hire someone that can do this stuff, like Brian, I would hire him for marketing. I'm looking for someone to do what I'm really looking for the most is salespeople than SEO because sales drives everything else, and you got to pay the bills to get these people. And I want to get people who are better at it than I am. But I got a working knowledge from doing that stuff. So I did have to look at some of the metrics. I have to look at what works, what doesn't work until I can afford to hire people because that's part of the integral product of growing. So the whole conversation started with sizzle and substance. You got, and I'll close this. You got to have sizzle to get people's attention, but you got to have substance. If you don't have substance, they're not going to continue to consume your content. And if that's part of your strategy and how you generate revenue, you're going to have a dismal prospect. So that's where Tom and I agree. We disagree on a few things, but if you ask me, and Billy said this, metrics matter. I look at them all day, every day. But the key thing he said was, I don't look at what my competitors do. I notice what Daily Mail does because I check them out about once a month. I want to see what kind of engagement reach they're getting. Will I achieve those numbers? Probably not. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try.
Right on, John. Hey, I'm looking at Tom's stuff real quick here. And I would say, like, could you do like some basics? Like, so I noticed that on Instagram, you use the word, you tag legendeering. So you understand the cataloging of legendeering. It is keeping all your posts and legendeering together on that platform. I just wonder. So, for instance, I might put production or business ethics or something else that maybe so I'm asking, I would challenge you. Could you use 2 more hashtags? You might even look up those hashtags because you're already using one. You're already making the content, but people might be, you understand that that it's catalog. Or is there other content like cells theory or whatever that your book falls in line with, so that maybe you throw 2 of those on for free? It is more likely that if you use business ethics or business principles or whatever you felt those were, that people that had a like mind, as Billy said, they might find those things. And I don't think 2 more would take all day. I don't think it's selling out. I don't think go on, Tom.
Oh, it's not selling out, right? Like, and that's like, that's the thing is I've never said, I don't think I have, maybe I have, and I'm misremembering, but I don't think I've ever said that, that no metrics matter, right? Like I don't think I've ever said that no metrics matter. Of course, in like the course of running a business, numbers do matter, because at the end of the day, if you're constantly in the red, then your business is going to fail, right? Like if you're not generating enough revenue to at a very minimum break even, but ideally to generate a profit so that you can reinvest in the business and grow the business, then your business is going to go out of business, right? So like I absolutely believe that numbers matter, that some metrics matter. I just don't think that the vanity metrics that a lot of people get caught up in really mean as much as they think they do. And what I'm saying, and what I've said before, what I'm saying today is I don't care about those metrics, right? I don't care. I honestly, genuinely don't care. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
you're not
I'm not
chasing
saying
the
they're not
vanity.
valuable for some people in some circumstances, right? I'm not saying that applies broadly to everybody, but I don't care, right? And you're right. It wouldn't take me all day, but if you said to me, hey, I think you should sit down and spend an hour doing like hashtag research, like I'd rather go bang my head against the wall. Genuinely. And I'm just not going to get myself to do something that I really, really don't want to do like that. Like I do
That's
plenty
fair.
of things. And look, I'm an adult. I do plenty of things that I don't derive in pleasure from, right? Like we all do, right? There's lots of parts of life that we have to do that we don't love, right? But like I'm just not going to dig into and start looking at data on hashtags. I'm just not going to do it because it's going to last about 4 seconds before I'm off on something else because I just can't be interested in it. I can't.
Okay, come on. All right. Okay, let's go. Jason, you got 30 seconds. Go. Then we're going to Elise and Tristan. 30 seconds. Your countdown's on. Go.
It's the pressure's on. Okay, so check it out. It is a tool. When you say you don't care, I would add caution. Never tell people what you don't care about, because you'll really disinterest them. And in a perfect example, it happened yesterday where we said, hey, I'm interested. And they said, well, but according to your interest, the way you're framing it, I'm not interested. Where I'm at is not going to meet your interest. And I said, okay, thank you. That's an invitation out. But these are tools. That's all they are. They are tools to sculpt your product. They are tools to craft your product of you. What you don't care about doesn't matter to anyone else. What they do care about is what your interest and what you put into a framework where they are invited, asked, however you want to frame it, to be able to take action. That is it. And there's my end.
Well done, Jason. Okay, Brian. Well, hold on. We're going to go ladies first. Elise, go on. Go.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for putting me in the room. I'm so glad I got a chance to make it here. It's interesting. I think to Tom's point, in those instances where we know that there are components that don't matter, and I am very much the same in that regard with some of my own projects where, the focus for me is on, one side of making something come to fruition. And there are all of these other tools on the other side, but it's not my cup of tea. And one of the things that I myself am still learning is in those instances, that's where it probably makes sense to build a team, so that, one area of any kind of project where that's really not where you want to be spending your time, there's probably somebody who is highly skilled in that other area who can spend their time and help, because I think it is a tool. But, Tom, to your point, I find myself in those situations too with creative projects where I would rather focus on one side of building something or putting something to fruition. And I know that there are all of these other components, but every now and again, it just takes so much effort to look into those components. So one of the things that, I'm learning myself and starting to really embrace and understand more and more as I go through experiences in that regard is finding ways to connect with the right people, places, or things to kind of help cover those areas that really aren't my cup of tea, but I know are essential and important. And like I said, I am always still learning, but just my thought, and really glad I caught the room. Always enjoy the conversation. I hope everybody's doing well. Thanks.
Elise, well done. Nice to see you and glad you are here. We appreciate you. All right, let's go here. Hold on. All right, I'm going to go simple show and tell. I'm looking at two things. You want the right, or you want the one on the right, or you want the one on the left, Tom?
Let's go left.
Okay, left is simple. We'll go left, and then I'll show you right too. Just so left. So left merch. I use Printful. Printful is a good company for any of my creators out there. You don't have to have it all on hand. Dominick Domasky, Motivation Champ. I put my logos on stuff, make all kinds of stuff. Super cool, easy to work with. So I would use Printful. I would at least check it out. And the cost you can change, go up and down with quality and stuff. The other thing that you missed out on for another week, we will have to talk about this later. That's Champion Trophy. Okay, go. Next up, okay, Brian Alves, and then we're going to Tristan, and then Tom's going to give us a wrap up. Go on, Brian.
All right, what a great conversation today. I really got into this, and I just want to put a shameless plug that I interviewed Tom about his book Legendeering. I got to know him more about not only in that interview but in this room today as well. So 1:00 on Friday, live on Instagram. We're going to have that interview. It was pre-recorded, but it looks like it's live. So 1:00 this Friday, we're going to get really deep into the mind of Tom. Now, I just want to say something, that there are many different forms of marketing, and whether Tom realizes it or not, he is marketing. And I could see the butting of heads with John, and not really butting of heads, but just the disagreements, because there is different forms of marketing. Like John and I, I exercise different forms of marketing, and John seems to be like myself, a traditional type of marketing, really in your face, direct in your face, looking at the statistics, looking at the stats. And then you have, what today is all about is the mainstream marketing, which is, a soft sell, a gentle sell. I want to build a relationship with you. I want to humanize with you. I don't want to, I don't want to have that glow in my teeth and the tie and the jacket, So Tom's form, the form of marketing that Tom is involved in, it's his entire being as I get to know him. And his book, which is coming out, is talking about, humanization of not only, businesses using video to humanize their brand, but it's true to his character. It's true to what he talks about, and the method of marketing that he unknowingly is using. He is marketing. And again, shameless plug. We're going to talk more about it on Friday, 1:00 on LinkedIn live. Thanks for the time.
Brian, good stuff, man. Share the link. Share the link. We need more Tom in our lives. I like Jason's got a funny picture here. I'm not sure what it is. All right, will you go on? Tristan, Beth, you each got we'll give a little more than 30 seconds, and then Tom's going to give us a wrap up. So weigh in, Tristan. What do you got going on, man?
Analytics I do love, but I think sometimes I take it or leave it because you can suck up a bit of time. And I've been reminded that never argue or talk with someone who has a totally different view to you on politics, raising kids, or podcasting analytics, because the only way they're going to do is pull you down, and then you're going to be fighting for something on the ground of, should I not like this? So just take that and go, no, it's not helping me, move on.
Tristan, that's a good one. And so often, like, we could just have core differences on something that at its core, even though neither may be wrong or right, that we disagree, and we're never going to agree, and we're never going to find the midpoint because at our core, it's different. Interesting. We had Beth there and Beth ran off. So, well, on that note, Tom, I think it is your time. Hey, what's up, Simon? We're just about to close. Listen to Tom's wrap up. So, Tom, what do you got for us?
I got two quick things for us today. So I want to hit on one thing from towards the end of the conversation there. Jason mentioned it, Elise touched on it, talking about, kind of saying, what you like and what you don't like, and the impact, being honest about that and open about that. And I just wanted to say that I am of the school of thought that the best thing you can do when you're authentically representing your brand and your values is tell people exactly what you like and what you don't like. Because what that is going to allow you to do is to create and foster a community around shared values. And at the end of the day, a group of people, a community with shared values, are going to be much more engaged and interested in supporting one another than a group or community that does not have shared values. And in fact, I would argue that if the group does not have shared values, they're not really a community, definitionally, right? So I think genuinely, I believe that one of the best things you can do is to be honest and frank and open about what you like and what you don't like. Because when people are looking for opportunities to join a community or align themselves with somebody else, right, they're going to do that primarily around shared values. And if you are open and honest about what you like and you don't like, then you're going to weed out the people that you don't want in your community and invite the people in that you do want in your community. So I just want to say that I think genuinely, I believe it's one of the best things you can do. The other thing too is that, we spent a bunch of time in the room today, going back and forth between myself and Billy, and myself and John J. Wiley, and myself and JC, also had a good back and forth. I really enjoyed the conversation here today because people were challenging me, and I like that. I enjoy it. I enjoy having those conversations and teasing out the nuance and talking about the differences in the way I think, and where I think it applies and where I don't think it applies, and hearing what other people think and how they approach similar problems from their own perspective and how they bring their experience to bear. And so what I would encourage everyone to do in order to figure out a good path for you is to think about it using this analogy. So I'm 45 years old, and I'm old enough that when I started driving, my parents gave me a Rand McNally Road Atlas. And I know there are some other folks in the room who are of the same age demographic, including Dom, who probably, when they first started driving, had a road atlas with them, right? Or a paper folded map, right? To be able to figure out how to get to where you wanted to go. And so what I want to encourage everyone to do is to think of your journey or your path in business, right? In marketing, in sales. Think of it as a road trip, right? And so what I want you to do is go back to the days before you could just put an address into Google and it would tell you how to get there. Go back to the days when you had to get out the old atlas and figure it out, right? Start from scratch and figure it out. And so what I want you to do is first pick the destination, because that's the first step in any road trip, right? You don't just get in the car and start driving down the road and go, hey, where should we go? Right? You're putting the cart before the horse. So first thing you do is you pick the destination, then you get that map out, you unfold it on the table, and you start looking, and you realize pretty quickly there are lots of different routes you can take, right? there's a scenic route, there's a local road only, there's a route that avoids tolls, there's a route that includes a ferry, there's a route that takes you through 2 different states instead of just from one state to the next. Like there's all kinds of different routes, right? So you get that map out and you start planning your route, and you plan that route according to your priorities, right? What interests you? So you pick your destination, you plan the route according to your interests, right? Do you want to see the world's biggest ball of string on the side of Route 66 or not, right? You plan the route according to your interests, and then you pack your bags, you get ready, and finally you get in the car and you start driving. And if you approach your business journey, if you approach your marketing or your sales journey in that way, even your content development journey, right? If you approach it in that way, if you pick your destination first, where do you want to end up? What's most important to you? What's your goal? Pick your destination, plan your route to get there, right? Get out the atlas, look at the lines on the map, figure out what roads you want to go down, what places interest you, where do you want to stop, what do you want to see along the route. Pick your route, plan your route, and then get in the car and start driving. Then you'll be able to get where you want to go, and everything you do will be in service of the goal that you've set forth for yourself. Right. And that's the way I always encourage when I sit down. It's one of the conversations I have with clients when we sit down and begin the process of crafting a content strategy for them. The first thing we do is talk about what the end goal is. That's where we start. And then we backwards engineer everything. And we do it very, very intentionally. And it's so that everything we do from the time we get in the car to the time we arrive at the destination is in service of getting to that goal. So that's what I would encourage everyone to do, whatever you're trying to do, whether, you're Billy building a sales empire or you're John J. Wiley taking over the radio waves or anybody else, regardless of what you're doing, right? Pick your destination and then plan your road trip and take us along for the ride. So thanks very much, everybody, for listening this week. Appreciate it. If you need merch, go to Printful, Print on Demand. I agree. I've used them too. They're a good resource. I'm just going to say that again out loud. You can go check out their website. If you can't see what Dom's holding up because his camera looks terrible today. I think he's having some computer problems. His guy didn't show up to help him out. So he's having some computer issues and I can barely see his smiling face. But yeah, so anyway, use Printful. They're a good company. And last but very not least, before we close out the room, whatever you do, if you're a creative and you want to further your creative passions, your creative process, and your creative goals in 2024, then I would encourage you to go to creativecon.com. That's CRE, the number 8, TIVECON.com, creativecon.com. And we invite you to join us in Chicago at the Metropolis Performing Arts Center on February 17th and 18th for an amazing weekend of value delivered and designed to help you further your content and creative goals in the coming year and beyond. So please check it out. Invite all you guys to check it out. Hope to see you all there. And until then, we'll see you here next Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. Until then, I'm Dom for Tom. I'm Tom for Dom. Wow, that was weird. That's the first time I've ever done that. Said the names backwards. Anyway, until then, I'm Tom, right? I'm Tom. Yeah, I'm Tom. I'm Tom for Dom. We love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. And we'll see you again next week on Wednesday and Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. Have a great weekend. Love you guys. Bye-bye.